I've learned that what I've been going through is so common, which is so disappointing that it took me to go through it to realize what a huge gaping flaw there is in the system for people with chronic autoimmune illnesses like me. Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Nina. I'm a certified life coach. On this channel, I talk about coaching tools, techniques, and principles. I share about my experience with chronic illness, my healing journey in general, and today I have sort of a disappointing, long-awaited update about what my treatment with Crohn's disease has looked like over the past 3 months. So recently I posted 2 very long, pretty comprehensive videos about my experience with my Crohn's disease, both my diagnosis process and my treatment process for the first year of my diagnosis. I've been dealing with Crohn's disease symptoms for coming up on exactly 2 years now. By the time this comes out, surely 2 years now. I've been diagnosed for a little bit over a year, and I've been pretty much untreated for this entire time because the treatments that I have been doing have not been working. And I was really excited to share at the end of my last video where I talked about my Crohn's disease, about my plan moving forward with treatment after seeing a new GI whose plan for me was to get me on Remicade infusions, which is a biologic that is a TNF alpha blocker. I'm not a medical professional, disclaimer, but I think it's a TNF alpha inhibitor or something like that. And biologics in general are the gold standard of long-term treatment for Crohn's disease and many other autoimmune illnesses. And because Crohn's disease as an autoimmune illness is a chronic condition, I, was coming to terms with the fact that I would be on this medication, be receiving these treatments, these infusions for the rest of my life. And even though it was sort of daunting to have to cope with the heaviness of that aspect of my diagnosis, I was just so looking forward to finally getting something that works, as biologics have proven to, for the first time in so long of dealing with such annoying and sometimes really debilitating symptoms. But unfortunately, I'm coming to you here still feeling awful, still feeling the same way that I have been feeling over the past 2 years. And it's not because the treatment that my doctor wanted me on hasn't worked for me. It's because I haven't been able to get the treatment because of the unfairness of our medical system here in this country. And I know it's not a problem that's exclusive to the US, but it's a problem that we face here nonetheless. And I wanted to, make this update video on how my Crohn's disease treatment has been going for the past 3 months. Not only because, I set up that expectation in my last video of, I'm gonna give an update on how Remicade is going for me. And, I feel that desire to fill in on where my journey has gone since last time I checked in. But also I feel really driven to give this update because the things that I've been dealing with over the past 3 months is not a unique experience. In fact, it's all too common, and it seems just so wrong on so many levels that I don't understand why, one, this is the way that things work. This is the way that people with Crohn's disease and other autoimmune illnesses tend to be treated by the healthcare system. But also, 2, it's shocking to me that this isn't something that's being talked about, that this isn't something that I had any awareness of myself before I went through the experience. So I don't know if there's anything really that can be done, but it just seems wrong to me that there isn't enough discussion going on around this. So back at the end of May, when I first saw my new GI, my gastroenterologist, and she put forward the plan of me getting on these infusions, this biologic treatment based on the severity of my Crohn's disease. The next step was to get this treatment approved by my insurance. That involved, getting blood work done so that they could see my inflammatory markers. It involved showing them the pictures from my most recent colonoscopy and endoscopies, and obviously the recommendation, the sign off from my doctor. Now, it's worth mentioning that I do not have benefits from my job. I recently turned 26 this year, and I was really overwhelmed with navigating having to seek out private insurance. I didn't really have any guidance around how to seek that out. So, what I did is I submitted my information somewhere as I was trying to browse for private healthcare options. Upon submitting my information there, I got an onslaught of insurance brokers, insurance agents reaching out to me to help me select a plan that would be the best for me and my circumstances. And I felt like, given the fact that this is what these people do for a living as insurance agents, I should trust what they say when they say that they found the right plan for me. But outside of the medical system being in general broken, there is definitely some inefficiencies, some flaws also in this whole system of insurance brokers, insurance agents. I don't want to make huge accusations since I don't know what's going on there, but in my experience, it has felt to me like this entire job of being an insurance agent or insurance broker seems to be pretty predatory because, spoiler alert, the insurance that I had at the time that my doctor made the recommendation and tried to get authorization from my health insurance to receive biologic treatment, denied that, said that no way, no how, they were not going to cover that at all for me, despite the fact that it's something that I need, despite the fact that I was paying a couple $100s a month to be insured by this insurance. They said, no, this is not something that we're going to cover. And biologic therapy is expensive. Remicade infusions can be anywhere from, I think, $7,000 to $12,000 per infusion. And that's something that I would need to be receiving every 8 weeks indefinitely. So I came to understand after the first insurance that I had at the time rejected my doctor's request for Remicade that I would need to seek out a more expensive health insurance option in order to have such an expensive treatment covered. And what ended up happening is that over the next 3 months, I would go through 4 different health insurances. Each time signing up for the particular health insurance that I had chosen based on the health insurance broker that I was working with, telling me that this was the best plan for me. And of course, after having the experience of being pretty jaded from being promised something and having it not work out for me, having this insurance that I was promised was the perfect fit for me and what I needed at the end of the day not cover the therapy that I needed, I was really diligent about advocating for myself. When I would sign up for a new health insurance, I would ask for in writing in the contract for it to explicitly say that this health insurance plan would cover Remicade. And every time the agent that I was working with would swear up and down that I had nothing to worry about, that this plan that I was signing up for was the best that I could possibly have, that there would be nothing that wouldn't be covered. And at the end of the day, there would always be a loophole. It would be something like, yes, we'll cover this treatment for you up to 80%, and we can only reimburse you after you pay out of pocket. And like I said, these treatments are very expensive. Ballpark average $10,000 per infusion. And I, like most people, don't have the means to pay upfront $10,000 every 8 weeks, even if I'm going to be reimbursed. And then this insurance company is also telling me that they're only going to reimburse up to 80%. And 80% of $10,000 still leaves $2,000 left over for me. And that, again, is not something that I can afford. And that was not something that I was warned about, that I was told to expect when signing up for this health insurance. And I don't know if it's the fact that these insurance agents are doing their best and acting out of good faith, that they don't know that the promises that they're making are full of loopholes, or if in fact this is just all in all a predatory industry, or if it's just an industry that doesn't well serve people who are chronically ill, who, if you're generally healthy and you're looking for preventative care, it's something that you're not going to experience problems with. But if you are dealing with something more chronic, it's just not something that's going to serve you. I don't know what the case is. I was doing the best with the information that I was being presented. I was doing my due diligence to explore different options like patient care programs. So this is what I was dealing with for the first month and a half of this whole process, fighting to find an insurance that would cover what I needed, trying to find an option that was cost effective for me to get the therapy that I needed for my illness. And it was a frustrating process of so much paper pushing and waiting with bated breath to see if this time it would work, if this time the insurance would cover it. Just spending so much time waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for an email to pop up. And it was a month and a half of kicking the can down the road and going nowhere. Finally, after being rejected by 3 different insurances, I found an insurance, not through an insurance broker, something that I was able to communicate with my GI's office about if it was something that they had seen be accepted for this kind of treatment before. I was able to enroll in this insurance plan that I had confirmation would definitely cover this treatment option for me. So I waited again, another 2 weeks for my coverage to kick in. Then I waited again another week after my coverage kicked in for all the paperwork to be submitted to this new insurance, to have this treatment approved for me, to hear back what I thought finally would be the approval. But what I heard back was only half satisfying. The previous 3 insurances that I had said that they would not cover the treatment at all, or at the very best, they would reimburse me up to 80% after me paying out of pocket. This, my now 4th insurance plan, was telling me that they would cover this treatment for me, but only after I tried and failed a cheaper form of treatment. I communicated with the prior authorization team at my GI's office, again asking, is there another insurance that I should try that will accept this treatment for me right out of the gate? And they said, unfortunately, no. As you're treatment naive, it's pretty standard for any and all insurances that would cover this treatment to require you to take different forms of therapies before getting to biologic treatment, whether it was steroids or immunosuppressants. Biologics are a very expensive form of treatment. They are the gold standard, the safest, the most effective, and the only form of long-term treatment for an illness like mine. So, of course, when it came to my doctor coming up with a treatment plan for me, she is the best doctor in the practice that I see. So of course that was going to be her recommendation or plan of action for me. But because it is such an expensive treatment, with the healthcare system that we are dealing with here, my insurance has the authority to override the decision of my doctor for me in order to only prolong the amount of time that they don't have to cover this expensive treatment. And I say prolong because at the end of the day, I will need to be treated for my Crohn's disease for the rest of my life. And these cheaper treatments that my insurance wants me to start with have too many risks, have too many adverse side effects to take them long term. So the wording exactly was that they would not cover my biologic treatment until I tried and failed these other therapies. Tried and failed. So once I take these pills that they approve for me for a long enough time that I start to see adverse effects or they simply don't work, then I'll be able to continue on to the safer, more effective treatment that my doctor wanted me initially on. But upon first getting this initial rejection, there was still a sliver of hope. There was the chance for us to appeal. And my doctor got on that right away. As I received the news that my insurance had rejected this coverage for me, I received the news at the same time that my doctor had appealed. So now it's just about playing the waiting game once again to hear back about whether the appeal would be approved or denied. The prior authorization specialist that I had been in contact with over the past number of months told me that my doctor had written a really good letter for this appeal process, but that she couldn't tell me what was the likelihood of the appeal being upheld or denied. And on top of just playing the waiting game, both of us were calling consistently, pressuring insurance to follow through with the decision. The appeal had been marked as urgent, which would mean that they would have to give their answer within 72 hours instead of 30 days, which is their timeline for appeals that aren't urgent. And still 72 hours came and went and no answer. After about 2 weeks though, I finally got the definite response that the appeal was denied and that I would not be able to go through with the treatment that my doctor wanted for me until I tried and failed other cheaper therapies. The next step after that was another 2-week wait until I could be squeezed in at 7:45 in the morning to see my GI, who had very limited availability, as most specialists do. And only this past week was I finally able to, for the first time, receive medication for my Crohn's disease. My GI talked me through what were the medication options that my insurance had approved for me. She went over with me how some of the medications that my insurance was suggesting that I try and fail before being able to move on to biologic therapy had already been disproven to work for Crohn's disease and were only proven effective in ulcerative colitis. At the end of the day, she determined, based on the medications that my insurance was going to approve for me, that the best choice would be an immunosuppressant called azathioprine. This is an immunomodulator, an immunosuppressant that is prescribed to a variety of patient populations. Most notably, I think it is prescribed for people who have gone through organ transplant so that their immune system doesn't reject the organ that they have transplanted into them. But it also has been prescribed to people with IBD, Crohn's and colitis, and I think also people with arthritis. It does have a number of potential side effects as well as a number of risk factors, including a greater risk for developing multiple kinds of cancer, skin cancer, lymphoma, cervical cancer. So it's one of those medications that you have to be really diligent about sun protection with, about following up frequently with primary care. It's a medication that while I'm on it, I will have to do consistent blood work to make sure that certain things are not dipping too low or aren't in dangerous territories white blood cell count, stuff like that. And the longer that someone is on this medication, the greater that those risk factors become. So it is a medication that you can really only take, as I understand it, for a handful of years at best. But there is also always the possibility that it won't work. It hasn't proven to be nearly as effective as biologic therapies. In fact, in doing my layman research on this drug to try and have as much information so that I can know what I'm getting myself into, and really my intention was to arm myself with enough information that I could feel less worried about the potential side effects and risk factors, which to an extent I am. It's really scary when you hear those broad stroke risk factors, and once you have more context around, the level of elevation of those risk factors, the context makes it less scary. Like I'm still more likely to die in a car accident than from this medication. But something that I did find in, again, my layman research was that this drug hasn't been proven to be any more effective than a placebo in treating Crohn's disease.
The Crohn's Disease Activity Index was developed to study sulfasalazine, prednisone, and azathioprine for induction and maintenance therapy in Crohn's disease, and azathioprine was neither effective in induction nor in maintenance. In patients with long-standing Crohn's disease, it was demonstrated that the maximal effect of thiopurine, similar to what we learned from present and correlates, tends to plateau after about 8 weeks, but the absolute remission rates in patients treated with these drugs was about 25 to 30%. And it became questionable whether these drugs actually had a role in induction therapy. The most recent Cochrane meta-analysis, which you don't need to read in full, simply demonstrated that azathioprine and 6-mercaptopurine offer no advantage over placebo for induction of remission or clinical improvement in patients with active Crohn's disease. It's a summary of numerous studies looking at azathioprine as an inductive agent.
Which is disappointing to hear, because in that itself, completely removed the possibility of this working as a placebo for me. And, like I detailed in my last video that I posted about my Crohn's disease journey, I was essentially doing placebo therapy for about a year in the form of homeopathy. That didn't work for me. And, at least with a placebo like homeopathy, there are no adverse effects. There are no risks. But here I am now taking a drug that has not proven to be super effective in treating IBD, that is exposing me to more potential side effects and risks, even though that is not even what my doctor wants for me at all. It's just to appease my insurance so that they can prolong the amount of time until they will need to cover for the more expensive therapy that I will eventually need indefinitely or for the rest of my life. Something that gets brought up a lot when talking about the situation with people is, why don't you just not take the medication? And unfortunately, because I need to try and fail this medication before moving on to biologic therapy, I need to take blood tests to prove to my insurance that I have in fact tried and I have in fact failed. And for anyone who may want to suggest that I try natural or holistic healing, I detailed in my last video on my Crohn's disease treatment what my experience was with that. That's what it comes down to. It comes down to money. And it sounds conspiratorial minded of me to even say that, but in asking my doctor, why this needs to happen, why my insurance is making me do this, that was the exact answer that she had. Remicade infusions are $7,000 to $12,000 every 8 weeks, but 30 days of azathioprine is only $36. This has obviously been a super frustrating process for me, a super long process that has prolonged me having any type of treatment for my illness for months. But beyond that, beyond my frustration with my experience, I and the people close to me that I have filled in on this whole process that I've been through, we're all just shocked that this is what the system looks like, that it is the case, that it is normal, that my insurance company can have the final say on my health plan and can override the decisions of my doctor. Not to mention, and again, this can sound conspiratorial minded, but I'm only reiterating what I have heard come out of the mouths of doctors. These pharma companies will create these super expensive drugs and go through means of extending the patents to rake in more money for these expensive drugs. And these are the treatments that they make the most money on. These therapies for people with autoimmune illnesses, because this is the kind of patient population that is going to need these medications for the rest of their lives. And because of the medications, will be allowed to live long lives. Because of this large and consistent income stream that these pharmaceutical companies are gaining from this patient population, there isn't really much effort being poured into trying to find cures for these chronic illnesses. Again, it sounds super conspiratorial, but this information that I've gleaned has come from people who are much more educated and involved in this field. I'm not just pulling stuff out of Reddit threads or wherever the hell else that people get conspiracies from. So right now, where does my health stand? I've only been on azathioprine for a handful of days now. I will say that since starting that medication, I have been feeling worse, but of course, that could have nothing to do with the medication at all. This is just a disease that has its low points and lower points, if you will. It also is a medication that isn't expected to make any positive effect before a number of weeks of taking it. Since filming this, I've been on azathioprine for 4 weeks now and still consistently feeling unwell. However, the positive effects of azathioprine can take 3 to 6 months to take effect. So we'll see. Who knows? It might work. As frustrating as this all has been, I'm trying to roll with the punches here, you know? Either this medication works and I start to finally have a significant amount of relief from these symptoms that I've been experiencing for the past 2 years. And maybe it doesn't work. Maybe already after my first set of blood work in 2 weeks, it's shown that it's not giving me enough value. And then I'll be able to move on to the therapy that my doctor recommended for me in the first place. This whole process of, one, being really sick, and two, feeling so unsupported, so abandoned by the healthcare system has definitely taken me to some low points. It's been really frustrating. I've been fighting super hard trying to advocate for myself, but now that things kind of are the way that they are, and it's just a matter of wait and see, roll with the punches, I'm trying to, kind of muster through and living my life as normally as I can. I'm kind of just in the mindset of trying to convince myself that what I'm feeling is normal, like it's not a big deal. Everyone feels like this. Everyone goes through these symptoms. As they say, Delulu is the solulu. Delusion is the solution. You know, the gut is the second brain. So as much as I can work to keep my mental health as stable and healthy as I possibly can, that's the best thing that I can do for myself, even if it means engaging in a little bit of Delulu to get through the day. But yeah, this has been consuming my health journey for the past 3 months now, so I felt like I couldn't go without giving this update, especially because things have gone, you know, just a bit differently than what I initially thought they would and how I initially shared they would go in my last Crohn's disease update video. And of course, I feel like this is something that people should be talking about more. You hear all the time that the medical system is broken. Here's an example of how. Of course, if you have more information that can help give me further insight that I'm not privy to based on what I shared here, I welcome that in the comments. Thank you so much for being here, for listening to my story, for supporting me. I'm more and more grateful and excited for myself that I decided to start this new channel, and thank you for being here on the ground level with me. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay healthy, appreciate the health that you have. That's something that definitely I've been focusing on, as much as my gastrointestinal health is fucked. I am grateful for my lungs being able to take in a deep breath, that my arteries are unclogged, that my heart is beating, doing my best to take care of my mental health in all of this. Make sure that you take care of your mental health too, even if it means engaging in a little Delulu. What was this? It's like what the TikTok e-boys used to do on TikTok. I don't know. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.